We're at the Lark Inn in Cottonwood Falls, Kansas. The Lark Inn is a guest house that specializes in cooking classes. Chef Kris Larkin is cooking up something special for the holidays inside. Shall we join her?
Hi, I'm Kris Larkin. I'm the chef here at the Lark Inn, and you're joining us in the holiday season. We are making Swedish tea rings, and that's a tea ring that's made with yeast dough. You'll learn how to do that, and then we add all kinds of fruit and nuts to them, bake them, and then I'll show you how to package them to give out as gifts to your family and friends. The first step is to make the yeast dough. We'll start with 2 packages of yeast. Make sure that the date is okay. You don't want to use yeast that's outdated because it obviously won't grow. So we're going to start with some warm water, and I just use tap water. I fill it with it in my hand. You don't want it too warm, but you want it warm enough to dissolve the yeast. And because it's a little bit of a cold day here, I did it a little bit warmer because I'm going to be pouring it into a metal bowl that will cool the water down a little bit. I'm pouring the yeast into the water. I'm going to mix it first with my mixing blade. Then when it's mixed it up a little bit, I'm actually going to reach in with my hand and make sure that all of the yeast has dissolved in the water. Okay, as you can see that this is the half a cup of warm water and the yeast, and it's starting to bubble. That means that the yeast is working. And so now we'll add the other ingredients. We're first going to add a half a cup of sugar, just plain white sugar. And we're also going to add a half a cup of scalded whole milk. I scalded that earlier in the microwave for 2 minutes and let it cool. It's still a little bit warm, which is great because it will help the yeast continue to grow. Then I'm going to add, it calls for 2 large eggs, but because I get small eggs from my local farmer, I'm going to add 3. And they're really holiday colors. Quite green. I love them. And the yolks are amazing. The next thing we'll add is the fat part of it. I use a fourth of a cup of just one didn't want to come out. The vegetable shortening, and then a half a cup of real butter. A fourth of a cup of shortening and a fourth of a cup of real butter. You can use a half a cup of real butter for the whole thing. I basically do it for economic reasons because I make a lot of these tea rings for gifts. And I don't think it really changes the taste at all. Unless you're a purist, of course. Once that's kind of mixed together, I start adding the flour. The flour is just regular, I'm using unbleached today, but white flour. And I'm going to start with 1 cup. And it's starting to make a dough-like consistency. I'm going to add a 2nd cup. And then I'm going to beat this until it looks like a batter, maybe like a cake batter or something. I want you to see what it looks like. It just looks like a cake batter at this point. This is the dough hook part of the procedure, and just another attachment, and it keeps you from having to knead the dough by hand. So I always use my dough hook. By the way, I do have to admit that I have all my ingredients out in a row, and I just noticed that I had not added the salt, so I added the salt in between takes. So now I'm going to start the dough hook. It will start to knead the dough, and it will pull away from the sides when it's done. And this takes probably anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, kind of like hand kneading. And always turn your machine to the lowest, just like you were kneading it by hand. Just do it really slow. So I'll see you back in about 5 minutes. Okay, you can see that the dough is now clinging to the dough hook, and it's pulled away from the sides of the pan, of the bowl, and so it's just about ready to take out and just do a few hand kneads. Okay, I've taken the dough from the bowl, and after it had been with the dough hook, I'm just going to give it a few light kneads with my hand. You basically just pull the dough. As you can see what I'm doing, I'm just kind of keeping it in and around, and I put a little bit of flour on the surface just so that it won't stick. I really just do this hand kneading just to feel and see if the dough has been kneaded enough, if it feels right, which it definitely does. It's not too stiff. It's pretty smooth when I pull it into the ball shape. It just looks like a really nice yeast sweet dough. So one reason to do it, just to get your hands on it, just feel if it feels the correct way that you need to have it feel before you put it in the bowl to rise. Okay, I've got a nice glass bowl. I've sprayed it with some Pam spray, or mine actually is canola spray. And then I'm going to place the dough that we have ready here on the cabinet top. I'm going to put it face down first so that it gets covered with oil, and then turn it over. I'm going to put plastic wrap over the top and put it in a nice warm place to rise for about a couple of hours. See you back in a couple of hours. Well, here we are back after a couple of hours, maybe just an hour and a half. And here's the dough we've had rising for at about an hour and a half. It's doubled in size, and I've had it near a warm stove, and I'm getting ready to roll it out at this point. Be sure to flour your board that you're going to roll the dough out in, and go ahead and take it out of the bowl. It's nice and alive filling. I'm going to actually make 3 tea rings with this. You can make 2 large ones or 3 small ones. So I'm going to divide the dough equally into 3 parts. I'm going to roll out the dough in a nice rectangle size, probably about 15 by 10. You don't have to get out your ruler to measure, but just kind of judge. My mother loves to say that. Just kind of judge the shape. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it into a rectangular shape, and then we'll be adding butter and sugar and cinnamon and nuts and fruit, and then we'll roll it up jelly roll fashion and make our Swedish tea ring with it. Okay. I've got it in approximately 15 by 10, and it's not exactly straight. I was making this with some ladies the other day, and one of the ladies said, "Oh, mine looks like the map of the United States." But what you're going to do is, at this point, I have all of the things that I'm going to be using in the tea ring lined up here so I don't forget anything. I usually make anywhere from 19 to 20 of these at a time, so I get into a production and I just don't want to forget anything. I'm going to start with butter, and I'm going to use the butter to put on top of the dough. Just smear it on with your hands. That works best, better than anything else, better than a spatula or whatever. And be pretty liberal with it, because what you want to do is have the butter caramelize with the sugars that you're going to put on. And the sugars we're going to use are brown sugar and regular sugar. I've used over the years making these, I've tried different combinations, and those just seem to work the best. All right, I'm going to add the sugar now. And again, using my hands, just put it on liberally to the edges too on this particular part of it. Now the white sugar, same thing. pretty liberal with that too. And now the cinnamon. And I particularly like cinnamon, so I use a lot of it. It's up to you. On the recipe, I think it calls for a teaspoon, but as you can see, I'm probably using more than that. Then once I get it on there, I want to also make sure that it is all blended in too. You can add, I always like to use nuts on my tea ring. You don't have to have nuts, but I just particularly like them. And these are just some pecans. They're not toasted. They're just some pecans that I've chopped up